Tuesday marks the 200th anniversary of the death of English author Jane Austen. She only completed 6 novels, but that was more than enough to make her famous for centuries. So we think it's a perfect opportunity to find out more about the writer who's recognized for her satire and observations on class.
It is truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Probably one of the most famous opening lines of a book is written by Jane Austen. She was born in 1775 in Hampshire, England. Her father was a clergyman and preferred the company of his books. She had 6 brothers and a sister, whom she would spend her entire life with. She was a keen reader and wrote many short stories, plays, and finally, her 6 famous novels. On the 200th anniversary of her death, her former home in Hampshire offers a glimpse into Austen family life.
She did push the boundaries. I mean, she changed her publisher for when she was writing Emma because she thought she deserved more money. And I think that's a really, really interesting thing about her. She liked the money that she made from her books. I mean, she wrote them. I think she couldn't have not written them because, you know, she was a creative person. But she wanted to get paid probably for them because she knew that people appreciated them. So she was very much an early feminist.
Miss Bennet.
Mr. Darcy.
Her stories have been adapted for the screen countless times. And she inspired many other hits like Clueless and the Bridget Jones series.
Surely one of those dates is more likely.
They're both equally likely.
They're very simple plots. They're about love and marriage and money and power and small domestic family settings. And I think they're applicable to any time and any age.
Sir, I cannot accept you. Don't worry, Mr. Collins.
Even though she didn't receive the fame she deserved during her lifetime, her legacy is still very much alive.
You cannot make me.
Our very own Nursena Tuter has been looking back at Jane Austen's life and works, and she joins me now. So, Nursena, Jane Austen has had a huge impact on the elements in our daily lives. Yeah. And even 200 years after her death, she's had a great legacy. Tell us more about it.
So Jane Austen is one of the biggest names in the English literature. One of her most famous works, Pride and Prejudice, now sold more than 20 million copies. But that happened after her death. She became so popular because she uses archetypal vices that we all have in us. It's going to be relatable always, no matter where you're from, which time you're living in. It's going to be relatable because we all have struggles with pride and prejudice, arrogance and such. So she's putting these follies into people, and we see their story and they grow out of them throughout the books. But she's actually very careful not to point what is right to do and what is not. She's giving these follies to otherwise very lovable characters. So you don't actually really judge them. You sort of relate to them and follow them throughout the story. So she's using that human point of view. So it's going to be relatable no matter what. I think that's one of the reasons why she is so popular even now.
And another thing that she's done is she's caused very dramatic changes throughout history. And one of them is social status. Yeah. So can you tell us more about how she's caused changes in social status? So it's actually,
excuse me, it's actually because of her own experiences. When Jane Austen was 20 years old, she met a very young and handsome law student, and they fell in love. They went to balls like in her books, but he was from a very wealthy family, and his family didn't approve of their marriage because of Jane's social status. So they parted. And the same year, actually, Jane Austen wrote the very first draft of Pride and Prejudice. So we can actually say that she sought solace in fiction because reality was cruel. So it's not a surprise that she has a tendency to criticize the society, especially the class system. She wanted to give the poor but intelligent female character another chance at finding the love of her life and, you know, marrying him no matter how much money they owned. So she's using these critical point of views, and they're actually still very relatable. The class consciousness is still there. I mean, didn't we think about what we're going to wear for the show last night?
We did indeed.
We did indeed. It's still there. We're still using those labels in our minds. Yes, we're not saying, oh, they're from nobility or, I don't know, from working class, but it's still there. We're still judging people according to their clothes, what sort of, I don't know, cell phones they're using, which cars they're driving.
And before we wrap it up, I just want to touch upon her effect that she's had on the role of women in our society today.
So some people argue that she didn't actually do any sort of empowerment for women because her characters and married, they find a suitable husband and it's happily ever after. They say that she's not teaching young generations, young girls, anything really important. But if we say that, we would be judging her from a very modern point of view. It was the Regency era. Women barely had any rights, and marriage wasn't about love. It was about money. You married for the status. You married for the title. So even writing characters, even writing stories about people who got married just because of love, just because of the sake of the love, is a revolution on its own. Also, during the early 20th century, the suffragette movement quoted Jane Austen when they were marching for the right against women. Right to vote for women. So, yes, we can argue if she's one of the earliest authors of feminist literature or not, but I don't think we can actually deny her impact on it.
That's for sure. That's all we have time for, Nursena. Thank you for giving your insight.
Thank you.